I am a retail lifer. So I started my career at Macy's.com more years ago than I would care to admit in the creative department, and I vividly remember when we had our first $1 million sales day. I remember the excitement that coursed through the office as we all quickly ran down the hall into the boardroom to get on a conference call, not a video conference, we weren't ready for that yet, but a conference call with our San Francisco office to celebrate that moment. And that excitement really quickly turned into wide-eyed concern when we realized we needed to build a lot more distribution centers to get all of the coats and bags and sheets and towels from our stock into our customers' homes. This was a really disruptive moment in the life of a 140-year-old retailer. But I believe that what's happening now with mobile and with the changes that are happening to how people discover products, I think it's an even bigger disruption. This is my former home in California last Christmas, and it's nice and cozy. We're all getting ready for the Christmas season. I'm enormously excited to have seasons again. But hidden within this is my single favorite home decor piece in my house, the disco gnome. So bear with me. This completely ridiculous product was the lead Christmas decor piece from CB2, a US home goods retailer, about 4 or 5 Christmases ago. And never in my life would I actively search for a disco gnome. How could I possibly know that I needed this glorious item? I had to discover it. So when CB2 put it into my Facebook feed, it stopped me cold, and I converted about 5 minutes later. Twice, actually. If you look closely, there's 2 on my mantle. One currently lives in my flat in Kensington. The other one is on my desk. It makes for a really easy way for people to figure out where I sit when you have an open office plan. But so I wasn't looking for a disco gnome. I had to discover it. But the second it was put in front of me, that discovery very quickly led to action. Let's talk about mattresses. It's a pretty sort of straightforward business, pretty basic everyday products, and established players from IKEA to Argos have been selling them for years. But what we've seen in the last few years is that this entire subvertical has been disrupted by online direct-to-consumer retailers. So the 3 behind me are just some of the examples of the companies that have invaded this so-called sleep industry, and together they've gone from nothing to a $1.5 billion industry. And soon, we're probably looking at the first mattress unicorn. It's a weird phrase I never thought I would say, but this is an online mattress business valued at over $1 billion. Who'd have thought? So you're probably wondering why I am talking about disco gnomes and mattresses. But the fact is that what's interesting is that what is happening with those is happening across all areas of retail. We are in a time of profound change. What we are living through right now is the 4th industrial revolution. It's the information revolution. And all of us in this room are right at the heart of it. Change is being driven by technology, and at the center of that is mobile. If history has taught us anything, it's that during periods of profound change, those that win are the practitioners, the people and the businesses who understand what's happening on the edges and what this technology is empowering. They lean into change. They get comfortable with being uncomfortable. They take inspiration from all around them, borrowing and scaling insights to apply them to their business. They embrace change. If you look at the makeup of the Fortune 500 from when it was created in 1955 versus today, only 12% of the companies on the original list remain. Just 12%. Why does this happen? Because new entrants have identified a consumer need and developed new and disruptive ways of serving them, and that's largely due to a mobile-first strategy. So projecting into the future, it used to be a lot simpler. And so particularly for retail, until recently, it's felt like a known entity. You know, it had its ups and downs, but overall retailers could reasonably predict what was on the horizon, and this was especially true when it came to fashion and apparel. But the shift to digital and the rise of mobile have changed all that. Elevated expectations on the part of consumers and newly minted market disruptors have upended everything. So the current evolution and change in the market, it seems to be happening faster than ever. And new brands are seeing trends and innovations that are necessitating changing quickly to adapt quickly, or else you're going to be eaten by your competitors. So in building out plans for the coming years, many of us have started to look forward a few, and in some recent midterm planning, we were looking ahead to 2021. And while 2021 may feel like it's light years away, the reality is it is just 2 years and 2 months away which is crazy. So we have to think about what that retail landscape is going to look like in a short period of time. But to really think about how much change is happening right now, let's go back. Let's think back 3 years, just 36 months, and everything that's happened. We've had an all-time high in store closings. Amazon has grown in market share. It's now the largest clothing retailer in the US. 30% growth, expected to do about $28 billion this year. This is a massive disruption. Traditional department stores are looking to buy their way into digital innovation by buying companies like Gilt for Saks Fifth Avenue, Trunk Club for Nordstrom. You've got brands like Menser Gavriel, that I'm sure I'm pronouncing wrong, that really developed the first post-recession it bag in the luxury space. This brand came out of nowhere, and in a very short period of time, their bag became the most searched item on the list, with a waiting list for it that rivaled that of the Hermes Birkin bag, despite the fact that there's a $400 price point. Out of nowhere. You've got brands like Boohoo, who were UK-focused but have expanded into the US, saw 140% growth, made their founders multimillionaires, and it's worth noting that that strategy was really built on an Instagram influencer approach aimed at millennials. We can see that full-price platforms have really struggled. So traditionally, new brands would look for distribution through department stores, which is my background, so I love them. But department stores have gotten really addicted to cost-cutting. So if you are a brand looking for full-price distribution, you have to get a little bit flexible. So we're seeing players like Stitch Fix with a subscription service, where you have brands like Rebecca Minkoff coming in and they're offering things at an average price point of $195, but they're getting that distribution that they previously would have expected from a department store. And while fast fashion continues to grow, we're seeing an increased consumer awareness of the need for sustainability and living more green. So Rent the Runway started as a company really focused on event wear and just rentable, here's your sparkly dress for the night. But what they saw was that people were really looking to reduce their carbon footprint, and a way that they made this possible was through a subscription service. And in 2 years, their subscription service went from nothing to 1/3 of their revenue. This is a huge amount of change, and it happened in just 3 years. And if it feels like a lot longer, you're not alone. This is just how fast things rise and fall. So we've seen these massive shifts happen with food, shaving, glasses, beauty, clothing, apparel. It goes across all of the sectors. And these are just a few examples. The Financial Times calls this the disruption of mundane products. I quite like that term, the disruption of mundane products. But this is not a small or a niche phenomenon. We're talking about material levels of funding, revenue, and market share. Between them, the top disruptors in this space have raised over $1.5 billion in VC funding. So this should really be a wake-up call for all retailers and brand owners. And these disruptors are all very different businesses, but they have one thing in common. They're built on discovery. So discovery has always been a key part of shopping, we all know that, but this is different. Technology, and by that I mean smartphones, fast internet, people-based marketing, and video-first communication, it's causing discovery on mobile to explode. Smartphones are supercharging behavior that has always been at the core of shopping. I didn't know that I wanted a disco gnome. I discovered it in my Facebook feed. The gnome found me. And these businesses have realized the power of products finding people, rather than waiting for people to find products. And if you talk to the disruptors, this trend seems really obvious. So the founder of Birchbox, one of the disruptor companies I shared just a minute ago, talks about this trend as the rise of the passive shopper. And in fact, that insight is the key to Birchbox's business model. So typical beauty companies will target about the 20% of consumers who are super passionate about product. Birchbox flipped that, and instead they're talking to the 80% who are more passive. Think about my disco gnome. I'm not passionate about okay, I'm a little bit passionate about disco gnomes now that I know that they exist. But at that moment when I discovered him in my feed, I wasn't. I had to discover it. So when people are on their phones, today's consumers are increasingly expecting relevant content to find them. Mobile is push, not pull. And so the lesson here is you can't wait for someone to actively express intent. You have to activate the passive shopper. The businesses who are winning today aren't waiting for purchase intent, they're creating it. And at Facebook, we've seen firsthand how powerful discovery can be. 10 years ago, Facebook was very much a pull world. If you wanted to see a person or a group or a brand, you had to search for it. You had to go to their page or their profile. And then one day, an engineer said, wouldn't it be helpful if we just had all of those updates come to you and you didn't have to search for it? And that small idea, that insight, became Newsfeed, which is the way that we are now used to consuming content on our mobile phones. The funny thing is, when we launched Newsfeed, people hated it. We were so used to everything on the internet being pull, and in fact, the day after it launched, the group that built it woke up to a brand new Facebook group on the platform, 1 million users, and the group was called I Hate Newsfeed, Turn It Off. The irony was that the only way that people discovered this group to join it was because it was in their newsfeed. So this was really seeing the power of discovery at work. But when the anger died down, we saw that people really loved discovering photos of family and friends, news articles, videos. Back then, we weren't used to relevant content finding us. But today, it's the expectation. Excuse me. And over the 10 years that we've been building Newsfeed, it's become the world's most advanced discovery engine. Over 2.2 billion people use Facebook every month. Over 1.4 billion people use it every day. And every single feed for every single user is unique. This is discovery on a massive scale. So let's take a step back. We know that the disruptors have realized that they can activate passive shoppers through discovery on mobile, and they're using that insight to supercharge their business. So if you want to compete in that space, there are 3 challenges you need to overcome. The first is remembering that there is animation on your slide. So the first challenge is to stand out with the endless amount of content that is being created today. This is pretty mind-boggling stuff. So from the beginning of time until 2003, short period of time, humanity had created roughly 5 billion gigabytes of information. So that's movies, books, music, PowerPoint presentations, photos, all of that. 5 billion gigabytes, beginning of time to 2003. Now, we create that much information every 10 minutes. So by the time I finish this presentation, assuming I keep to time, there will be another 15 billion gigabytes of information in the world. And not only are we creating a lot of content, we're consuming a lot of content. So if you were to print out all of the content that an average person consumes every day in their social feeds and stacked all of them on top of each other, it would be as tall as Big Ben. So in other words, we scroll through a lot every day on places like Facebook and Instagram. So in a world where so much content is created and consumed every day, it is critical to be relevant, meaningful, and timely in the way that you communicate. Otherwise, you won't stand out. In other words, the amount of content that we have access to is growing exponentially, but our ability to consume content isn't keeping up. We're not inventing hours in the day, and we see this trend firsthand at Facebook. We use artificial intelligence and machine learning powered by billions of intent signals every day to decide what to show people in their newsfeed. For an average user at every login, there's about 2,000 pieces of content that they're eligible to see. For an average user, 2,000 pieces of content at every login. But no one actually looks at that much. They look at about 10% of that. So we use AI and machine learning to understand what is the most relevant 10% to show to each person. The takeaway is that you have to fight to be relevant and remarkable enough to make it into the 10%. I want to share a really great example of a brand innovating to make it into the 10%. So when Zalando launched the Topshop brand on their website, they wanted to communicate this all over Europe. So they worked with Cara Delevingne to produce a great video with a really simple message. Topshop is now available on Zalando. Now, the normal approach would just to take that video, get in front of the audience. But instead, they created 60,000 pieces of content, personalized with Cara Delevingne saying the names of remote towns in Germany where customers could now get Topshop products. So suddenly, she was speaking to potential customers in a much more personable way. So for someone standing in Hamburg, you would hear her say, Topshop is now available in Hamburg. Note that I took the easy German city to pronounce. So this was a really remarkable, relevant way of doing things. Now, to be clear, I am not arguing to go out and create 60,000 pieces of content. This was a test. But I think the insight here is really clear, that if you can bring more personalization, even at a basic level, you become more relevant. The second challenge is the human need for speed. So not only do we create and consume a lot of content, we also consume it incredibly fast. People spend on average about 2.5 seconds on Facebook reading a single update, including those from friends and family. So this means even if you are relevant and remarkable and make it into that 10%, you still only have seconds to grab attention. So and this is an even bigger challenge for the next generation of shoppers. So for people younger than 20, they consume content at a rate twice as fast as people over 50. So you have to capture people's attention incredibly quickly. So this doesn't mean that people don't watch long-form content on their phones. They absolutely do, but you have to grab attention in that initial window. We call this the 3-second audition. But the good news is that we now understand that our brains work a lot faster than we used to think. We used to think that it took us about 300 milliseconds to process a thought. We now know it takes 30 milliseconds, a tenth of that. And particularly when we're focused, when our eyes don't have to move, it even goes up. So let's give it a try. If I can ask you just to focus on the screen and read along, and it's going to speed up. So the brain can process information incredibly quickly. And the combination of mobile and video is unlocking this need for speed. So that means to capture attention, you have to create what we call thumb-stopping content. And if it's done right, it's not a problem to land messages in a really quick way. So let's take a look at 3 examples. The first is from Bose, clearly showing how you can grab attention and drive emotion in 10 seconds. This is beautiful with sound on. It works with sound off. I love that the way that they've animated it, you can almost feel the music pulsing through the screen of the phone. The second one is a great example from Heinz, which I love not just because I am from Pittsburgh and this is a hometown company for me, but they're showing you really clearly the key message, all natural ingredients, in just 8 seconds. And then you've got Mr. Clean, grabbing some attention in 2 seconds, whatever it takes. He's sacrificing for all of us. The third challenge is keeping up with the consumer shift to visual communication. So this is potentially the single biggest trend that we've seen on Facebook and Instagram. So if you think back about 5 years, most of Facebook was text, if you think about your feed. Now it's photos and videos. 5 years from now, it will largely be videos, and we believe beyond that, it will largely be VR and AR. And we're working hard to build new tools that allow retailers to connect and engage with their customers in a more visual way. So here's a great example of how this can all come together from Mulberry. So we have basically combined 2 of our most visual formats, Instagram Stories and Instant Experiences. Okay, show of hands if you have tried Instagram Stories. Thank you, excellent. Everyone who hasn't tried it, it's so much fun. It's my favorite thing that we have on the platform. In the 2 years since we created Instagram Stories, it's grown to 400 million people using it every single day. That's from 0 to half the population of Europe every day in 2 years. And with Instant Experiences, what we've created is this canvas where brands can tell immersive stories exploring products and collections. So what we enabled Mulberry to do was to create a beautiful ad in Stories and then move users into this immersive format where they could browse the collection, from discovery to immersion to shopping in just seconds. This is the next phase of discovery on mobile. I love the innovation that Gap did here with their spring denim campaign, and full disclosure, I worked on this one, so this is a proud baby of mine. So typically, if you think about a spring denim launch or a colored denim launch, you would picture some beautiful imagery, probably what you would expect to see in out-of-home or in print, showcasing the creative, showcasing the product. What Gap realized was that so many people were discovering content and products on their phone, and they're doing it vertically, so they wanted to shoot for the platform, and they wanted to shoot for Stories. So they created, along with their creative agency, this really beautiful piece of content that is made for vertical, that takes you through this stop motion and some video of all of the great colors of the denim collection. But they didn't want to stop there. They wanted to help bridge the divide between online and offline. So what they did at their flagship store in San Francisco was they took over the front entrance, and they recreated that set that they had had for their hero creative. And so as shoppers came into the store, they were greeted by the friendliest store associates you've ever met in your life, who said, "Hey, would you like to make your own denim video?" And then you step in front of each of the different colors and in front of each of the different cameras. You strike a pose. And then in about 30 seconds, the technology stitches all of that together, creates a video, and sends it to somebody's phone either by email or by text. Now, Gap talked about this in Instagram stories so that they walked somebody through what the experience would look like. So they walk you into the store, show you around. And this is on Market Street in San Francisco, right next to where the cable car turns around. This is at a high-traffic tourist area. They also talked about it in carousel ads on Facebook. I may have gotten in on the fun. I decided I wanted to be a superhero and fly. And then they also gave you the option to share your video so Gap could play it within the store, so all of a sudden you star in the campaign. So this is a really great example of thumb-stopping content creating a delightful experience, bringing online and offline together. I also love this experience from M&S from last Christmas on Messenger. So they were looking to drive awareness of their Christmas menu shopping. And this was a really personalized experience that they created on Messenger to guide people through a menu of culinary delights. So driving awareness, product consideration, and seamless transactions. So taking daily inspiration for Christmas menus, coming together with that curated content, M&S built meaningful personal connections to the brand while increasing mobile sales. So they saw a 21% higher average order value through Messenger than from their Christmas website. 60% of people who opened a conversation received personalized menu recommendations, and a third of messages reached an entirely new audience for M&S. Think about that. When you've got the kind of reach that they do and the brand awareness they do, to find a third going to new customers, that's massive. So this is discovery, relevance, and personalization all together. So where does this leave us? So let's go back to the beginning. I paid $100 for that disco gnome, and I had no idea I needed him. But why? Because it showed up in my feed. And every day, this is happening for millions of people across Facebook and Instagram, and the disruptors I talked about are using this insight to gain market share. They've realized that they don't need to wait for people to find products. With today's technology, their products can find people. The reality is, anyone in this room can do this. You just need to bring 3 questions back to your business. How can we use data to be more relevant and meaningful? How can we become even more visual? And how can we deliver our messages faster than we ever thought possible? If you answer those, the potential is huge. And at Facebook, we believe that when products find people, businesses find growth. We are in an evolutionary moment for retail. And this is not just survival of the fittest, it is survival of the smartest. It's survival of the flexible, survival of the resilient, the curious, the builders. Grab hold of discovery, be where she is, inspire her, earn her attention. I fundamentally believe there is no better time to be in retail than right now. Moments of change are moments of opportunity. We have the opportunity, and I believe the responsibility, to write the next chapter of this industry story. Where do we want to go? Thank you.